It is indeed. So, welcome back, everyone. Thank you so much for coming to join us again today. We will be talking about sustainability in the West Midlands. So we've gone kind of zoomed out yesterday looking at sustainability in the global community, talking about system-based introduction of technologies. And now we're going to sort of zoom into our local area in the West Midlands, which we're really excited about. Such an amazing panel to talk about today. And I'm going to let everyone introduce themselves. Although I'm so enthused that you've made the time to come, so thank you so much. And if you could maybe explain not only sort of maybe a little bit about your journey and what you do, but you know who you work for and how sustainability is enacted through your role. So perhaps you could start with Anna.
Thank you, Gabriella. So hi, everybody. I'm Anna Bright and I'm Chief Executive at Sustainability West Midlands. So I'll just tell you a little bit about our organisation and then very briefly my background. So Sustainability West Midlands was established back in 2002. So we're approaching our 20th year. We're going to be celebrating next year. And we're a not-for-profit organisation based in Birmingham, but working across the whole of the West Midlands. So there's three main areas of our work, really. Firstly, we're a membership organisation and we have about 100 really varied cross-sector members from across the West Midlands, but beyond as well. All of our members, from the small charities up to the large private sector companies, they're all recognising that sustainability is really important and they're having a role in that journey for the West Midlands, and we're supporting them on that journey. So we've got the membership. We also run good practice networks. So whatever sector and organisation is in, they should be able to benefit from joining one of our good practice networks. So we've got a network for the NHS, for example, for universities, colleges, local authorities, and so on. And the idea of those networks is to really share good practice and enthuse people to move forwards with sustainability projects. The final area of our work is the one-to-one consultancy we provide. So we're working with a range of organisations across the region, from the Combined Authority, LEPs, private companies, and we tend to work with them to help shape their sustainability strategies, but really importantly, on delivery. So thinking about the actions that come out of those strategies and helping them to implement those. So that's what we do. My background is around 20 years in the sustainability sector, in the private sector, focused on water and wastewater management, with about 5 years at Severn Trent Water, and then on organic waste management at a small consultancy. And prior to that, a long time ago now, I was at Leeds University, where I did environmental biogeoscience. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Anna. I can't wait to learn more about Sustainability West Midlands. It's so great that we have that here, and that I suppose you offer support. Is it to enterprises here locally?
It does tend to be. Obviously, you know, as the name suggests, our unique understanding is of the West Midlands, but we are one of the only organisations of our type. So we do work outside the region. We're doing work in the East Midlands, in Leicestershire at the moment, and we've done national work as well. So, but it is predominantly West Midlands, yeah.
Brilliant, great. Maybe we can move on to Serena, who's from GB SLEP, Midlands Energy Hub.
Yes, hello, thank you, Gabriella, thank you everyone for inviting me to attend the forum. Yeah, just following out from Anna, actually I'm coming from an organization that is actually fairly new. I'm from the Midlands Energy Hub, so I'm employed by Nottingham City Council, who decided to manage a government-funded initiatives or program, which is called the Local Capacity Support Program. And the Midlands Energy Hub is the result of this program. This funding were released in 2018, so as I said, a very recent organization or setup. The purpose of the Midlands Energy Hub is to support the capacity and the capability of LEPs and local authorities to deliver energy strategy, first of all, but also energy projects at local level. So to increase that sort of number and size of energy projects within the local authorities boundaries and local enterprise partnerships. Altogether, there are 5 energy hubs nationally that has been kind of funded through BASE, through this program that I just mentioned. And the setup of the Midlands Energy Hub is to have an officer like me in each of the local enterprise partnership. So that's why this is my first hat, and then I'll change my hat to the second, which is the LEP, the Local Enterprise Partnerships. I'm the officer for the Greater Birmingham Solihull LEP area, so again, very local to the Birmingham area specifically. The Local Enterprise Partnership, as the name says, is a partnership of businesses, local authorities, and educational establishment, universities, and colleges as well. And the mission of the local enterprise partnerships is to enable the economic growth at the local level, so increase a number of jobs and opportunity for the sectors, and attract investment in the local area. How the low carbon and sustainabilities come in is that obviously is a huge net zero, and sustainability is a huge opportunity for the local area. And GBS Lab particularly has realized actually they have a key role in trying to support the delivery of a local net zero target. As you're aware, the combined authority has set a target of net zero by 2041, and Birmingham City Council itself by 2030. So very ambitious targets. So we need the collaboration of all organizations and the input of everyone to kind of achieve these targets. The LEP has realized that, and realized that actually the strategic role of the LEP should be actively contributed to this. So when I started within the Midlands Energy Hub to support GBS Lab, I was directly engaged with the setup of or the creation of a low carbon sector action plan, specifically to support the growth of the business sector in the low carbon, which goes alongside and is as important as the achievement of the net zero target, because without businesses that can deliver solution and technologies to achieve the net zero target, then it will be difficult to do so. So really important from the lab perspective is to support these businesses to grow and offer these technologies that are required to achieve net zero. And secondly, to support the decarbonization of all the other sectors, food and drink, creation, automotive, to make sure that actually they decarbonize their operation and activities themselves. So that's pretty much what we are trying to do. So looking at both vertical and horizontal ways, supporting each single sector as part of the local industrial strategy and energy strategy as well. So before joining the Midlands Energy Hub and the lab, I work for a while in the public sector again. So at the moment it's kind of between public sector. I work for Leicestershire County Council to support that internal net zero agenda. Also, I've worked for a charity, an environmental charity, Groundwork West Midlands, so very, very local as well. And prior to that, I was a sustainability officer at Further Education College in North Warwickshire. So if I need to go back even further, following the line of Anna, I don't even remember. No, before that, then as you can guess from my accent, I'm born and originally from Italy. So I did my degree in Milan, environmental science and technologies. And soon after university, I joined an energy from waste company, and I was the environmental consultant looking specifically at environmental legislation compliance in relation to energy from waste. So quite, yeah, it feels like it's been a long time. So, but I'm quite keen and happy to be now working where I live as well, in Birmingham. So it's exciting actually to contribute to both on work and from a personal level to the targets that has been set up at a local level.
Just a quick question. There was a lot there, Serena. I was just wondering,
Sorry,
in terms
I tend
of
to talk too much.
it's very interesting to know that you wear quite a few different hats. In terms of the work that you do, is there any part that you sort of looking at the design? Because we had Sally Sudworth, who was championing this idea of sustainability really needs to be embedded at the beginning of a business or I suppose a project. Is that something that you're working towards as well?
Yeah, very much so, particularly with the work at the Greater Birmingham Solar Lab. That's what we are trying to do in terms of supporting the journey to for businesses to decarbonize, as I said. So there are two kind of looking at two perspectives. So that sort of more generic business support that is delivered also through the Growth Hub. So it's kind of a hand-holding support to businesses to understand, first of all, to understand what support is available to them, but specifically on the sustainability journey, which is, when we're talking about a low carbon and sustainability, it's quite complicated. There is quite a lot of information for businesses that are not familiar. They need to have that sort of better understanding. So that's kind of what we do in terms of providing them with information to walk them through the decarbonization journey. We are looking at a different intervention to facilitate that. So it's not just a one-to-one basis, but it's also how we can engage them with the online platform or support that is already available, or creating new support that is more tailored to the specific need of the businesses. So for the lab, the key is actually that sort of continue discussion and collaboration and listening to the needs of the businesses. An example, we are in the process of trying to set up a system which is a very early stages, but the whole concept is to try to help business or facilitate business in the process of introducing measures to reduce energy consumption. For example, to help them understand what project they should be prioritizing, whether it's LED lighting replacement or heating system changes, or maybe just moving directly to that micro generation aspect, or even before that, just understand how you can manage your energy use a little bit better. There is quite a lot of programs available from other organizations. University are quite keen on that. Patricia will probably expand on that as well in terms of the support that is available and run through European funding as well. So the lab is trying to coordinate all these and make sure that businesses are aware about this support is available. Through the low carbon sector action plan that we are developing, which is specifically for low carbon businesses, we are trying to support businesses from the stage of being a startup to kind of later stages to identify the specific needs on this journey. So that sort of planning, okay, where are you now? So understanding and planning where you want to be. So what are the intervention that the lab or other organization needs to put in place to offer that support? It's not just financial. In some cases, or in most cases, it's financial, the limit, but in other cases, it's just the sort of lack of understanding or knowledge of the topic. So that's how we're trying to fit in this gap.
Thank you, Serena. Okay, so perhaps we can see from Simon, who's been working on the Commonwealth Games. I don't know, do you interface with these organizations, or how is it that you go about trying to make such a big project like that sustainable?
Hi everyone. Yeah, so we've had a meeting quite recently with Serena and with our team at the Commonwealth, just understanding what the LEP does, and you know how that supply chain and those SMEs can get involved with Commonwealth Games projects. So yeah, we've also got that. So we've got a sustainability forum as well, which Anna is part of. Again, reaching out to sort of local community guys, and yeah, looking at our supply chain, and really just trying to embed the ideas of the Commonwealth of sustainability, bring that into a local forum, and then sort of push those ideas out through that.
Could you talk a little bit about how you got into sustainability and
Of course.
working on these kinds of amazing
Yes,
projects?
no problem at all. So originally, I was just working in the event sector, and then the London 2012 Olympics got awarded, and in the event sector, sustainability wasn't very high on the agenda. So it was get someone in the organisation quickly to get trained up, and then pushed out towards the different contracts that we were doing. So I went on quite a few professional qualifications. So the IEMA Associate Award originally, and then the NEBOSH Diploma in Environmental Management as well. So the events company then got involved with the Olympics on contract, and I was seconded out to the principal contractor, who was ISG at the time. So with that, I was working with their sustainability team on all non-competition venues, so around training facilities, screening facilities, villages, anything that wasn't a competition venue, basically. From that, fell back into the events industry for a little while. So the sustainability push or drive went down a little bit, but then Glasgow happened 2 years later in 2014. So there's a bit of a drive again. So again, we went up to Glasgow. We worked on part of that project. After that, in the events industry, sustainability took a bit of a nosedive. For London 2012, we had the ISO 2012-1 that was brought in, and it was made for London. So that's sustainability in events. So a lot of the large events since that have tried to obtain this award. Me personally, I went back to university at that time because I didn't have a degree. So we were living in London, so I studied in Twickenham. I just studied geography. From that, like Anna, went into the water sector. So I worked basically for Balfour Beatty, but it was on all Thames Water's assets as part of a joint venture. So I was there for a little while. Then my wife got seconded out to Hong Kong. So we moved as a family out to Hong Kong. And then I got to work with the Hong Kong Rugby Union as their sustainability manager. So driving their strategy and their focus essentially around rugby, but then pushing that out to the sporting sector and the event sector within Hong Kong. That secondment was coming to an end. So it was looking in the UK what sporting events were happening, and obviously the Commonwealth was the big draw. So yeah, I was getting in contact with them, applying, and yeah, I was lucky enough to get this job. So I've been back in the UK since the end of March, and yeah, working with the Commonwealth, which has been great.
Fantastic, thank you, Simon. I'm sure we'll all
No worries.
have some questions later on. Patricia, could you unmute and sort of talk a little bit about EBRI and perhaps a little bit about the Birmingham District Energy Scheme, which I don't know if many people know about because
Okay.
That's
Do you
something
want me, Gabriella, to also just sort of do what others have done with the roundup of career background? Is that helpful?
I'd love to know about
Right.
your background.
Okay, I had muted because my neighbours are having building work done. It's a hot day. The skylights are open, so hopefully this will be okay. Yeah, so I have a confession that I'm originally a scary person. I'm a physicist. That generally makes, I know Gabriella is as well. She would like that. But most people go, oh, at that point and the conversation ends. But that's what I did my first degree in. I then did PhD in well, I didn't want to do a PhD. I went into the only job that I could find at that point in time and ended up doing PhD part-time while I was working on some advanced energy systems in Europe, let's call it that, modeling work on computers. I then went into the commercial sector, you know, newly charged with all this lovely information on really advanced energy and how we were going to reduce CO2. And this was going to be great. And we were going to implement lots of these. And I worked in the industrial power sector for 10 years, trying to build plants that were sustainable. It's really hard. It's hard not because of what you learn on paper about carbon and all that stuff. That's actually quite easy. You can plan things and you can say, you know what, let's build one of these. And then you do it for real. And you have stuff coming in every day into your plant and it's different from one day to the next. And you're thinking, oh my God, what's going on? Why is the, you know, why is the output gone down in the turbine today? Why are we building up stuff there? And I ended up at a situation where I was working as a combustion engineer at the time. I'm crawling around inside boilers, scraping stuff off, sending it off to labs for analysis, trying to work out what on earth is going on as we're looking at some of these new fuels. We were looking at poultry litter, we were looking at straw, all sorts of things. And then I went to a meeting in Europe, and there were this bunch of academics there, and they looked at me and they said, oh, well, that'll be because of the potassium. And I'm going, sorry, the what? And they said, oh, well, everyone knows that, you know, you're going to get that sort of fuel chemistry issue. And I realized at that point how vast the gulf was between the stuff that people know in academia and what we need to know in the real world in order to actually make these projects happen. And it's all very well to have great ideas about sustainability and to put them out there. But if you can't build something that works every day, and you know, the people who worked in the water industry will know this, you actually have nothing to offer. So what I learned was that you need to have the practical engineering to be able to make these things work, and you need effective knowledge transfer between academia and the commercial sector. The second thing I learned was that policy is really, really important. I was lucky enough to be appointed to a ministerial advisory board back in the 90s when people thought renewables was a nice idea. And the obvious thing that you would do is convene a set of knowledgeable people to tell the minister what to do about it. And had a great experience working with what was then Department for Trade and Industry on that sort of thing for a few years. I was involved in the finance and investment side, which was stunningly interesting. And you realize then that actually what a difference small tweaks in policy can make. That if you just change the time frame over which you will offer incentives, or if you just alter, you know, the criteria that are considered acceptable for sustainable systems, then you can make a huge, huge difference to the number of things that you get coming through. And very often these policies are being set by people who have no background whatsoever in the day-to-day operation of facilities, and they've got, you know, nice ideas, but they don't know the reality. So what I've been working on for most of my career is trying to bring these three together. We have to have industrial and commercial operators working with academics, working with policymakers. And if you don't get that triangle aligned, the systems that you get will not be, I hate the word optimal because I don't believe there's any such thing as an optimal system in my sector, but they won't be sustainable, they won't work, they won't function. So that's sort of where I come from. And today I'm director of the Energy and Bioproducts Research Institute. We are right in the centre of Birmingham. You mentioned the district heating scheme. So we have a heating scheme on campus which runs through our basement effectively, and we have a link that allows us to feed into that. we don't routinely do that, despite having a CHP engine down there and despite having a big biomass gasifier. They are underutilized because of a whole load of constraints around systems that I'm not even going to bore you with, but we have the capacity to do things today that we actually don't implement because the frameworks aren't quite right, which is another reason why we need to get these things lined up. So I'm director of EBRI. In EBRI, we take biomass and waste and we convert it into a whole range of things. We have fantastic laboratory facilities. And we also have great scale up. So that allows us to work really, really closely with industrialists. We work with loads of SMEs, I think about 9,000 across the region. We have a big project that's recently been evaluated and proven to contribute £30 million gross value added to the West Midlands economy over the last 4 years, with 234 jobs created. So that's what we're doing. We're a university who's actually connected to the reality of sustainable implementation with SMEs across the region. I'm also lucky enough to lead the national programme on bioenergy for research at EPSRC level. And so we can also link out there to a whole load of other universities across the region. But in the Midlands, that is where we have most leverage over trying to get sustainability really embedded with the masterclasses that we run in order to help local businesses understand and navigate the complexity of sustainable systems.
Amazing. Thank you, Patricia. I yeah, very much admire your pathway into sustainability and the impact that you're having in our region. And it would be really nice to sort of understand, maybe from all of you, like what you think are, you know, the largest obstacles that we face in the West Midlands. I mean, Patricia, you just alluded to the fact that, you know, we do have a lot of capabilities that we're underutilizing. Anna, maybe you could sort of input a little bit here.
Yeah, so I think Patricia touched on this with her comments very rightly around the need to connect academia, industry, policy together. And unfortunately, I suppose what we see at Sustainability West Midlands is there's an increasing amount of passion for moving towards a net zero economy and doing things sustainably. But often organisations seem to work in isolation, where actually there is so many benefits from working in partnership, whether that's with other businesses, whether that's private sector working with the public sector. So that's very much a role of SWM, is to try and encourage those collaborative relationships that we really believe will make things happen more quickly and more effectively. I think the point around policy is absolutely spot on. You know, you can have these aspirations and, you know, plans, but if the policy isn't there to drive and support, you know, the decision making that needs to happen, that can be a real challenge. But you know, there are some really practical ways that we are trying to work to encourage those collaborations that I mentioned. So we've got something, I hate the name of this network, we call it the Innovative Low Carbon Working Group. We really need to come up with another name there, so if anybody has any ideas, let me know. But the idea of that network is to bring together businesses, academia, the third sector as well, to really try and make collaborative projects happen. We always have, you know, a slot from funders like Innovate UK, KTN around knowledge transfer and so on. So we really hope that that network is a very practical way of getting people together, swapping ideas and really making things happen. I'll pop a link in the chat so you can have a look at that network as well.
Is that a national network, Anna?
It isn't, no. It's very much West Midlands focused at this stage. I know there are other, you know, networks across the UK that do similar, and we do try and connect with those as well, but our network is West Midlands.
Simon, perhaps you could bring you in on some of like the obstacles. And as a Brummie myself, how are you ensuring that, you know, this incredible Birmingham is going to be in a spotlight basically of the Commonwealth Games? And I know that I am other students that are concerned about, you know, how are we representing ourselves on this global stage?
Yeah, for sure. So it's a lot of what we're doing is basically just following sort of Commonwealth Games protocols and Commonwealth Games framework, but you know, bringing that into the West Midlands, like we sort of briefly chatted to before. It's the Commonwealth Games is enabling a lot of ideas and a lot of systems that are in Birmingham to basically be enhanced. So a lot of the ideas and the projects that are in the pipeline have all been basically pushed forward, so this can happen basically in line with the games and to show Birmingham in its best light. You mentioned earlier, so be that around its bike lanes, around I think there's a fleet of hydrogen powered buses, you know, coming into Birmingham in line with the games. So you know, the technology's there, so it's just bringing it all forward and showcasing it and showcasing the West Midlands as an area on a global scale with the Commonwealth Games there as that was the sporting event, but it's just to show that area and what it can do. In terms of I suppose issues and sort of things that can hold it back, it's like anything else. There's a lot of, I suppose, politics gets involved sometimes, and you know, different money has been allocated to different parts of the United Kingdom. But it is just making sure that everyone sits around the table and that we have these discussions, and that, you know, that money allocated to us and to Birmingham, you know, is there, and you know, can drive the games and the city and the area forward.
And where are the expertise that you draw from in order to, you know, create a sustainable event such as that?
For sure. So we've got loads. So I've already mentioned the Commonwealth Games Federation. So they've got a whole network and a framework for sustainability embedded within them that we pass on from games to games. There's also a thing called transfer of knowledge. So each games that happens, so all their lessons learned come into this transfer of knowledge and gets passed on from games to games. So again, we're going to each games and we're not reinventing the wheel. So what we're doing is building upon every games that's gone in the past. So with the Commonwealth Games in the Gold Coast, so the most recent one, you know, they had a lot of really good sustainability initiatives, and we've taken up that baton and we're going to drive that forward with the Birmingham 2022 Commonwealth Games. So it's also looking at different partnerships. So we're working very closely with the IOC and also Paris 24, so the next Olympic Games. So they have got a massive sustainability initiative for the Paris Olympics. So it's working in tandem with them. You know, they've got a lot bigger time scale than we have. So it's, you know, things that already they've learned, they can pass on those ideas to us, and we can try to initiate those into the Commonwealth Games. As well as that, there's obviously lots of different consultancies, both locally, both nationally and internationally, that we can sort of feed upon. And sustainability in sport at the moment is a booming sort of trade. You know, it's really getting embedded in the sporting sector. So there's lessons learned all across the board. I've got contacts that we use, be that from Sail GP, so a new sailing initiative, which is very sustainability driven, alongside the Formula E guys. So there's lessons to be learned and collaborative efforts all across the sporting sector.
Thanks, Simon. Perhaps you could just let us know via the Commonwealth Games, like what do they deem to be sustainable?
Well, I suppose in terms of the games, it's making sure that they happen and that they can happen in the future. So with money and budgets being tight and all across the world, it would be, it's very hard for a city to put up the budget to be able to hold the games. So, you know, we have to work through what the games is, what it needs to have, and how we can drive it sustainably, be that environmental, be that economically or socially. It has to be viable across all sectors for games to happen. So I think in press quite recently, they were kind of saying this might be the last of the big event, Commonwealth Games. It might be scaled down a little bit moving forward after Birmingham, again because of the financial restrictions around the world, and you know what a city can really, you know, push forward to be a budget. But for us, we one of our main points, we're going to be the first carbon neutral Commonwealth Games, so that is one of our big drivers and big metrics there. Also, we're obviously looking at circular economies and conservation. But yeah, I think to make a Commonwealth Games sustainable, it just has to be able to go on from place to place and not sort of die out, you know, with a big bang in one city.
Can I comment, Gabriella? Is that?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think that there's a real danger here when we talk about, you know, making things sustainable, that we view this as black and white. And we think of, you know, one thing as being sustainable and another not. Sustainability just isn't like that. It's all about shades of grey. And we also need to be really careful. One of the things I know you wanted to talk about was trade-offs. But my focus usually is on carbon. I did loads of work on, you know, chasing numbers through the system to work out carbon intensity. But as soon as I do that, other things give way. So as soon as I focus on absolutely maximizing the carbon benefits, which I can do to the nth degree, you find that other things actually get a little bit worse. And then we have to start thinking about perspectives, you know, and Simon's just mentioned the importance of having the next games and about economic value. Sustainability has three dimensions. The environment's really important, but there's economic and there's social as well. And one of the reasons it's so fascinating is bringing all of those together. So I really hate the idea, and I think it's a big policy mistake, when we have thresholds and we say, that's sustainable, that isn't, we'll give money to that, we'll accredit that, we'll not do that. We all need to be maximizing sustainability, and we all need to be aware of those trade-offs and to be looking at, you know, when making our carbon reductions makes it so unaffordable for some people that we're removing access and then we're losing social benefits. So I think we need to be really, really careful and take a really holistic attitude here.
Yeah, I completely agree, Patricia. Did anyone else have any comments on that?
Yeah, I'll chip in if that's okay, just quickly. One approach that we tend to take when we work with any organisation where they're, you know, developing a sustainability strategy and action plan is to work with them as an organisation, but also their stakeholders, to try and really work out what are the priorities when it comes to sustainability. And of course, environmental performance and carbon emissions is generally a feature of that, but often there's much wider you know, impacts that they want to have. And I think it's only through having that initial conversation, but also getting stakeholders like their customers, their clients, their employees, and so on, to be part of those discussions. Can you work out, you know, what the priorities should be, covering those three areas mentioned by Patricia: environment, economy, and social as well.
It also perhaps leads into a conversation about climate justice. So for example, you know, we've got the clean air zone that's just come into Birmingham now. Is that disadvantaging, you know, people with a lower socioeconomic background because there's these extra charges? And ultimately, are we actually doing a disservice to our local area, because some people would then have limited access, as you just mentioned, Anna. And another consideration is, well, if they are not allowed in that zone, or they have an extra charge for that zone, are they then going to go around a longer way and in the end actually create more emissions? Does anyone have any insights into, you know, whether these sorts of unintended negative consequences and how they were perhaps mitigated against during this decision making for our area?
So I think on the, the social justice side and inequality is something that's, really important at SWM. It's something that we measure. So we look at health inequality across the region. So that's the life expectancy between our most and least deprived areas. And it's, there's a massive gap. In some areas of Solihull, for example, the difference in life expectancy is 13 years for men. So that's huge, and there's lots of contributing factors to that, but air quality and environmental surroundings is one of them. I think the question around the clean air zone, it's a really, really difficult one, and you are right that people living within that zone are going to be affected hugely financially by that, but equally I think I'm right that about 5% of our deaths in the West Midlands are attributable to just one element of air quality. It's a particular scale of particulate matter. So, and unfortunately, the people living within that clean air zone are the ones that are affected, the most by that concentrated area of air pollution. So it's a really, really difficult one that I don't have the answer to. I know the council have done an awful lot of modelling in their decision making. They have got commitments to meet, and they have, I think, tried to build in exemptions and so on, so that people do have time to plan. But it is a really hard one to pallet for some people. I can see that, and for businesses in that area as well. There's lots of small businesses in Digbeth, for example, that will be affected. I don't have the answer.
Yeah, no, I think Anna's right, though, to raise the impact of things like particulates on different sections of our community, and that gap in outcomes between different socioeconomic groups. I think we tend to forget that actually the lower socioeconomic groupings are often the most affected by what we loosely call environmental pollution. They are more exposed to it, they are more vulnerable to it, and it will have more impact on them. And while I absolutely agree, Gabriella, that there will be people who will be inconvenienced by this, and there will be people for whom it will cost more, I do wonder if we might have done a bit more around the people who actually live in the region in supporting them to still be able to have the mobility that they need to get to work and things like that. I think that would have been welcome. It didn't happen, but I think that at the same time we have to recognise that in the longer term, a lot of this will actually benefit some of the people who are most vulnerable and who live within that region. So I think there is a longer term benefit that is undeniable, but I do wonder why we weren't able to put something financial in place, given the revenue that is going to be reaped from the whole exercise.
Perhaps Serena, you could comment on that, since you've been supporting business.
Yeah, of course. No, I totally agree with what Patricia has just said. I mean, change is never easy, whatever it is. But is needed. It's going to be difficult potentially at the beginning, but then we'll adapt to it. We'll find a solution and alternatives that will be available. Will be actually simplify and improve the life of everyone. But so there are two things that we need to kind of accept, let's say, everyone from the business community, from the general public and community to the people living in the city, outside, is that we require a whole system change. This one is just an example, but we can also take the example of changing the energy system as well. We will need to shift the way we produce energy and we use energy. And that will require kind of a change in the behavior of people and how people live their daily life. So it'll need to happen at some point. So for me, in my opinion, the key is that sort of communication. So making sure that actually there is involvement of everyone affected by these changes. There is opportunity to express concern, to listen, to provide solution as well ahead of the change, which is something that has been done by the council and the combined authorities through the different plan they set up as well, and consultations. But we will get to the point as we are now where it's now implementing, and then it's just about adaptation to this change. To bring an example, very small as example, when I was working as a sustainability officer at a college, further education college, I did the most unpopular decision of removing all the waste bin under the desk and to put a recycling center in the corridor. I was the most unpopular person ever in the college. But after a few months and after 1 year, everyone was just saying thank you. The offices were less cluttery and everything was clean. It was better for them to understand as well the recycling at home. And they were engaging more with all the benefits around sustainability and waste management. So it brings quite a lot of information and participation on this whole system change. So it is a step that is necessary for the people that we require that sort of additional support to go through this. There are mechanisms in place that can do that. And that's why another key aspect is that sort of having the leadership in place and commitment to continue this once a decision has been made. And when I talk about leadership, it's not just about top down, but it's also from the bottom up. So it's how as a community we can be represent an exemplar for others and an exemplar for the from the politician and the leaders at national level as well. So we are all together in this. That's what I'm trying to say. It's not going to be easy to start with, but we'll get there, and there is no alternative. We need to do it.
Thanks, Serena. Maybe Simon, you can tell us about any moments of friction. Is that something that you encounter as managing these projects, that you have to sort of talk to people about why they have to consider these things? I know it's a different way of doing things, but can we do it this way because it's going to be better ultimately? And how do you have those conversations?
Quite difficult sometimes, but yes, totally. We have those conversations on a very regular basis, especially when we come to the parts of the games that are overlay or temporary infrastructure. It's happened this way in the past for many years. It's always worked, so they don't see the need to change sometimes. So it is kind of sitting down with them, showing them what we're trying to do is not annoy them or slow them down or totally change their company. It's about working to the future, by us helping them as well on this pathway. Then when they come up for different tenders in the future, then they're already going to have these tick boxes done that we've worked with them, we've given them the ideas, we've given them some of the infrastructure and systems to follow. So a lot of it is almost going back to the economy and costs again. To win these future contracts, they have to take sustainability on board now. It's not a nice to have, it is a must in any kind of sporting event. So it's sort of bringing them on board and just working with them, really. You can't just say, right, okay, you have to do this, and not give them an explanation. It's about sitting down with them. We go through lots of onboarding workshops and meetings. So we bring them in, we go through their scope of works with them. We show them, the kind of best practice, how to be able to do this between their work of best practice and what we see or what our ambitions are. And it's kind of just working together. You do get some that will stubbornly just put their heels in the sand sometimes, but all you can do is just talk to them. And at the end of the day, it's especially for the games, it's in their contracts. So that's a last case scenario that you want to go back and say, right, it's in your contract, so you have to do it. But it's just trying to sort of lead them down that path of their own free will, basically. But showing them the things that'll come out the other end. So those renewed contracts in other games, the better working practice going forward, how they can save money, how they can be more fuel efficient, how they can by having less packaging and less waste, then we're making their lorries lighter, so they can put more on the lorries. So it's it's just going through their whole processes and systems with them and just make sure they're aware of things.
That's amazing that actually expertise then comes to the region to benefit like local companies.
Exactly, yeah. So some of the things.
So it sounds like a well-greased machine.
You'd think so. I think it's an ongoing process, yeah.
I'm wondering, you know, we are talking about West Midlands, and we do have students who'll be watching. Where do you think in the West Midlands, you know, we need a larger workforce in terms
more engineers, please? I'm being serious. I had a meeting with a big multinational industrial partner at 9 o'clock this morning. And one of the things that, you know, I've been working with this guy for years on different research projects. And near the end of the meeting, he said to me, oh, and by the way, we've just recruited 2 of your students. I said, all right. And he said, yeah, we're taking them on over the summer. They've just finished they're finishing their MEng at Aston. They'll be finishing this summer. We'll take them on for a summer internship, see how they go. And if that works out well, then we'll find them something permanent. We desperately need people who can not just understand the sustainability concepts, but actually have, and the biggest thing here is a numerical background, and can apply that as well. You've got to be able to build stuff that works. If you can't build stuff that works, then you actually aren't doing much on the sustainability front. So for me, one of our biggest gaps is around engineers who also span over into sustainability. Now, I could do a plug here if you'll allow me, Gabriella, which is we are starting a new course in Aston, which is recruiting for this September for engineers who then want to do an MSc offering that will cover the sustainability foundations for them, because I think you've got to have both. You've got to have the practical capacity to do something and the knowledge of what all the policy stuff is, what the wider sustainability agenda is, and some of the more qualitative approaches, which are really, really valuable. In my research group, the input of the social scientists is absolutely as important as that of the chemical engineers. But the real challenge here is in getting people who understand both sides of that coin. And those people are like gold dust, frankly, when it comes to recruitment. And I will snap them up anytime. And there are a lot of employers out there who are in exactly the same boat. They want people who can cover both bases.
I think it's, you know, it's definitely recognised by lots of the organisations that we work with, and certainly, you know, across the LEPs, that the skills and the jobs of the future, you know, we can't necessarily meet right now. So we've just done a really big piece of work working with Serena and the Midlands Energy Hub, where we looked at that. I'll pop a link in the chat. I love the chat. Which, you know, looks at 2 future net zero scenarios. So it's looking at 2030 and 2050, and it's looking at some of the gaps that Patricia's mentioned. I know GBS LEP, where Serena works as well, have commissioned some research to really build on the data and actually speak to employers and say, look, what are the challenges that you're facing? You know, where are you facing challenges in recruitment? So obviously then the LEP and partners like the Growth Hub and so on can go on to help address those challenges. But from a very personal perspective, you know, we really try and bring young people into our organisation as much as possible, because it has so many benefits for us, but also them. So we have placements, we have a young director on our board, and we're not alone in that. You know, lots of other organisations do. So I would encourage anybody who is studying to try and sort of complement, you know, the academic side with that more practical experience within business or the public sector, which I think is hugely beneficial when you then go on to look for jobs.
I will probably bring in a personal perspective as well, in terms of, given my background, I'm missing all the sort of technical skills, which is, I realize, like, it will be so easier to have that. So just adding on to what Patricia and Anna said, it is really to have this sort of expertise in both like the policy and the social aspect and the economic aspect, and the technical skill is key in sustainability, because you've got that sort of technical understanding that you need to actually inform the policies, rather than actually say, oh, I think that will be good, based on nothing. So it is something, yeah, that is really required, and it's good to know actually there's going to be like qualification that's going to be developed to approach both aspects. Maybe I'll have a look as well, Patricia, when if you send some links.
I'm going to try and find the chat, frankly. Yeah, I've got it. I'll pop it in the chat.
Yes, thank you, Patricia. I think also it's about collaboration, and I'm sure you can all agree that, you know, a lot of collaboration has to happen in order for us to move to a more sustainable future. And on that note, I'm just aware of the time. Amazing talking to you all. We would love to hear just like a last sort of quote, like something that you'd like people to take away from this session. Of course, we've had so many nitbits during the session, but maybe Patricia, you could start with something that you think students should hear.
I will start with repeating what I said earlier. We need to get out of this mentality that sustainability is black and white. Sustainability is a whole host of shades of grey, but our aim has to be as white as possible on that continuum. And, you know, it isn't enough to comply with the regulations. It isn't enough to do what is needed by your minimum sets of standards that you have. You've got to always be looking to maximize the sustainability of everything that you're doing, and you only do that by looking holistically at those trade-offs.
Fantastic. Anna?
Yeah, thank you. I think from my perspective, the pace of change in recent years has been off the scale. You know, the interest in this, the policy frameworks that are there, the funding, the support, and I think particularly the passion of young people to make change in this area. So we need to build on that and use it. And I think the thing that strikes me the most is, you know, in conversations that we used to have around the need to be sustainable, the question that we get asked is, well, why do we need to do that? And actually now the question is how. And I think that says it all, really. You know, yes, we need to be wary of greenwashing and things like that, but I really do feel like the tide has turned, and there's a role for all of us there.
Simon?
I'll just echo what Patricia and Anna have said, really. Yeah, it has come on sort of leaps and bounds in the sort of the last few years, and the progress is just going to get sort of quicker moving forward. But like everyone has said, sustainability is not just one small thing. It's across all sectors and all aspects. So it's not about just working, in consultancies or in government or in sporting sectors. Sustainability is basically everywhere and encompasses everything. So, even if you're not doing degrees in environmental sustainability or, in engineering or in any other sector, it's never too late just, to get this knowledge and then take it out into whichever field that you want to. And there's always sustainability involved, be that in sort of management, be that in sort of buildings, sport, anything and everything. So it's kind of taking your passion, where your passion lies, and then sort of embedding sustainability into that, really.
And finally, Serena.
Yeah, very similar message, to be honest. Sustainability is just a word to describe this, but sustainability is our life, is the day to day. So we need to make sure that from the day that we wake up and we do everything possible to kind of look after what we've got around us, because we've got one world, and it doesn't matter whether we are trained for sustainability or not. What you just said, Simon, we all have a part on this, and going back to that sort of collaboration, we can all bring in that sort of expertise or enthusiasm to make the change that is required to kind of adapt and appreciate better what we've been given. So in the end, that's all about it. We are talking about carbon and sustainability, but is actually living in living better in this world, in a healthier world as well. So yeah, no, just yeah, continue. I mean, yeah, be enthusiastic and being positive about the change.
Yes, we need to celebrate the wins. And on that note, we will celebrate you sharing your experience, your knowledge, your ideas with us today. Thank you so much for your time. And tomorrow we're going to continue with sustainabilities in our universities. So we will be holding people's feet to the fire, see how we can make sure that our own university, our own institutions are being as sustainable as they can be. Thank you so much for the opportunities. We will be spreading these opportunities in a newsletter, and we look forward to continuing the conversation. Thank you very much, and hope you all have a wonderful rest of the day.
Thank
Thanks
you.
everyone.
Thank
Thank
you.
you
so
Bye.
much.
Thanks.
Bye.